Hello, welcome. This is Jason's Weird Reads. I'm Jason White, and today I'm going to be talking about what I want to read for the rest of 2023 and the beginning of 2024, otherwise known as winter, of both those years, I guess. And I like to read some ghost stories during this period of time, so you're going to see that there is a lot of haunted house type stories here. And I hope that I can get to them all. There's some on here that I really want to prioritize. So how about we get right into the list? First up, I want to read 6 Rooms by Gemma Amor. Now, I've had this on previous, I think the last time it was on here was last year. I wanted to read it then, but I never got around to it, so I'm hoping to get to it the second I'm done with the cryptid readathon. 6 Rooms by Gemma Amor. Here is the synopsis for that. Welcome all to Sunshire Chateau. Leicestershire's tongue twister there. Leicestershire's premier tourist attraction. It sits high on a hill overlooking town, shrouded by tall trees and rumors of murder, scandal, and intrigue. Tickets are hard to come by, so hold yours close, else the tour guide may not let you in. And that would be a pity, for there are so many things to see within these walls. History, glamour, and riches beyond your wildest imagination. Just remember the following rules. Don't wander off alone. Don't be rude to the guide. And whatever you do, don't touch the valuables, because the ghosts don't like it when you touch their things. This is basically all I know about this book, but I love Gemma Amor. Everything I've read by her has been stellar. I love it, so I'm really looking forward to that. Next up, I have a brand new book that just came out, I believe, on Halloween Day, and that's The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. It's due time. See what I did there? That it's due time that I read another Tananarive Due book. I absolutely loved The Good House, and I've been continuously wanting to read more of her work, but I just never get to it, and that's a shame, really. So I'm going to push myself to read more Tananarive Due in 2024. Now, Gracetown, here's the synopsis. Gracetown, Florida, June 1950. 12-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr. is sentenced to 6 months at the Gracetown School for Boys, a reformatory, and he's sent there for kicking the son of the largest landowner in town in defense of his older sister, Gloria. So begins Robbie's journey further into the terrors of the Jim Crow South and the very real horror of the school they call the Reformatory. Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts, or as he calls them, haints. But what was once a comfort to him after the loss of his mother has become a window to the truth of what happens at the Reformatory. Boys forced to work to remedy their so-called crimes have gone missing, but the haints Robbie sees hint at worse things. Through his friends Redbone and Blue, Robbie is learning not just the rules of how to survive. Meanwhile, Gloria, his sister, is rallying every family member and connection in Florida to find a way to get Robbie out before it's too late. The Reformatory is a haunting work of historical fiction written as only an American Book Award-winning author Tananarive Due could, by piecing together the life of the relative her family never spoke of and bringing this tragedy of those so many others at the infamous Dozier School for Boys to light in this riveting novel. Now, one reason why I want to read this book is I've recently started listening to Tananarive Due's podcast, and she's talked about it there, and I've listened to Tananarive Due talk on other podcasts about this book, and this it's an interesting story. I highly recommend checking out how she came to write this book. This book was also a big struggle for her to write because of some of the content within it, and because it's based basically off a real place, even though her place is fictional. But it's also based off something that one of her uncles went through, and she didn't know about this uncle or what happened to him until her mother died. And that's a really interesting story. Definitely go check that out and read this book as well. Next up, I want to reread The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This is another classic. I talked about it recently in a recommendation video for haunted houses and ghost stories, but I'm going to read you the synopsis here anyway. This is the story of 4 seekers who arrive at a notoriously unfriendly pile called Hill House. Dr. Montag, an occult scholar looking for solid evidence of a haunting. Theodora, the light-hearted assistant. Eleanor, a friendless, fragile young woman well acquainted with poltergeists. And Luke, a future heir of Hill House. At first, their stay seems destined to be merely a spooky encounter with the inexplicable phenomena. But Hill House is gathering its powers, and soon it will choose one of them to make its own. It's a good book, and I did have my description kind of wrong. It's not a psychologist. I forgot he's not studying. I think I got that confused with one of the adaptations, but he's an occult scholar looking for solid evidence of ghosts and creepy things. Now, I want to pair this book with the next one that I want to read, and that's A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. This is an official sequel to Haunting on Hill House, or The Haunting of Hill House, and it was commissioned, I believe, by Shirley Jackson's estate, so that says something. And Elizabeth Hand won, I guess, the rights. She didn't win as in a contest. She was chosen by them to write the book. And here's what the synopsis says about this book, what it's about. Holly Sherwin has been a struggling playwright for years, but now, after receiving a grant to develop her play, The Witch of Edmonton, she may finally be close to her big break. All she needs is time and space to bring her vision to life. When she stumbles across Hill House on a weekend getaway upstate, she is immediately taken in by the ornate, if crumbling, Gothic mansion, nearly hidden outside a remote village. It's enormous, old, and ever so eerie, the perfect place to develop and rehearse her play. Despite her own hesitations, Holly's girlfriend, Nissa, agrees to join Holly in renting the house out for a month, and soon a troupe of actors, each with ghosts of their own, arrive. Yet as they settle in, the house's peculiarities are made known. Strange creatures stalk the grounds. Disturbing sounds echo throughout the halls, and time itself seems to shift. All too soon, Holly and her friends find themselves at odds, not just with one another, but with the house itself. It seems something has been waiting in Hill House all these years, and it no longer intends to walk alone. Now, I also listened to an interview with this author in regards to the writing of this book, and it's a pretty interesting story. Also, how she came to write this book, and it'd be kind of like an honor for an estate, a literary estate as esteemed as Shirley Jackson's, to approach you and say, hey, we want you to write the sequel to one of the best horror haunted house books ever written. Next up, I have a collection of 4 novellas written by Ronald Malfi, and that is ghost written. Now, I don't know if there's a lot of haunted house stories in here. I don't think there is, but I liked the title, and I want to read more novellas, and so I'm going to read you what the synopsis is, which gives you a very short, like 1 or 2 sentence synopsis for each novella that's in this collection. First up, In the Skin of Her Teeth, a cursed novel drives people to their deaths. The next story, a delivery job turns deadly in The Dark Brothers' Last Ride. In the next story, or in This Book Belongs to Olo, a lonely child has dangerous control over an unusual pop-up book. In the next story, the last story in this collection, a choose-your-own-adventure game spirals into an uncanny reality in the story. Yes, that sounds kind of cool. And the synopsis ends with, full of creepy, page-turning suspense, these collected novellas are perfect for fans of Paul Tremblay, Stephen King, and Joe Hill, which sounds perfect for me. Next up, I have a book I've been wanting to read since it was first announced it was going to be released. Unfortunately, that release was a limited run, and it was a pretty small limited run, I believe, like 500 books or something. And I was kind of mad about that because the books were a little bit pricey, but it's out in the wild now. Everyone can read it, and some people... I've heard nothing but good things about this book. I'm speaking, of course, of Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. Now, I started reading this in the summer, but I put it down because I realized it's a winter story, and lately I've been really enjoying sort of keeping track, or at least synchronizing the books I read to the seasons, if I can. If I can't, then it's not such a big problem, but this since this one was so cold outside all the time, I kind of wanted to save it for winter, so I'm going to read it probably early January, as early as I can in the new year. And here is the synopsis for this. St. Vincent's Orphanage for Boys. Turn of the century in a remote valley in Pennsylvania. Here, under the watchful eyes of several priests, 30 boys work, learn, and worship. Peter Barlow, orphaned as a child by a gruesome murder, has made a new life here. As he approaches adulthood, he has friends, a future, a family. Now, it mentions there about his, Peter Barlow ends up in this orphan after a gruesome murder, and that gruesome murder happens in the first chapter, and let me tell you, man, it is thick with dread and atmosphere. It's awful, but in every possible way, every good possible way, it's nasty. I mean, this book opens with nastiness. Alright, continuing on. Then, late one stormy night, a group of men arrive at their door, one of whom is badly wounded with occult symbols carved into his flesh. His death releases an ancient evil that spreads like sickness, infecting St. Vincent and the children within. Soon, boys begin acting differently, forming groups, taking sides. Others turn up dead. Now Peter and those dear to him must choose sides of their own, each of them knowing their lives and perhaps their eternal souls are at risk. So that sounds incredibly awesome, and like I said, I've only heard really good things about that book. Alright, next up, I have The Dismembered by Jonathan Janz. I've been wanting to read this one for a while as well. I don't know if it's a ghost story or not, but it seems like a good story to read late winter, because I think it takes place in the spring. Yep, it does. Here's the synopsis. In the spring of 1912, American writer Arthur Pierce is reeling from the wounds inflicted by a disastrous marriage. But his plans to travel aboard, write a new novel, and forget about his ex-wife are interrupted by a lovely young woman he encounters on a London-bound train. Her name is Sarah Coyle, and the tale she tells him chills him to his bone, or chills his blood. Sarah's younger sister has been entranced by Count Richard Dunning, who is rumored to dabble in bizarre religious rites and experimental medicine. Arthur agrees to help, but he has no idea of what awaits him at the altar book, Sarah's ancestral mansion, or the remote English countryside where Count Dunning and his followers are about to unleash an unholy supernatural power. I haven't read Jonathan Janz in a while, but I have really enjoyed what I have read by him. And this one keeps... the cover looks very gothic, and a lot of the reviews keep mentioning how gothic it is, and so I'm all for that. I think it would be really cool if I could read that nearing the end of winter, considering it takes place in the spring, but I could read it in the middle of winter too. We'll see. Next up, I have The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Now, I've heard mixed things about this book, but I'm hoping to get to it. Here is the synopsis for this one. In a boarded-up house on a dead-end street at the edge of of the wild Washington woods, lives a family of 3. A teenage girl who isn't allowed outside, not after last time. A man who drinks alone in front of his TV, trying to ignore the gaps in his memory. And a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible, which is very odd. An unspeakable secret binds them together, but when a new neighbor moves in next door, what is buried out among the birch trees may come back to haunt them all. The majority of what I heard about this book is really good. A lot of people, the people who love this book, absolutely adore it, and I hope to be one of those as well. Last up for the haunted house type stories is Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Kah, another story that seems to have a pretty big division. People either absolutely love this book or they hate it for some reason. It's pretty short, so I'm hoping I can just throw it in maybe during the Christmas holidays or something. Here's the synopsis. I'm going to butcher some names here because it's, I believe, in like Japanese type names. A Heian era mansion stands abandoned, its foundations resting on the bones of a bride and its walls packed with the remains of the girls sacrificed to keep her company. That right there is just chilling. It's the perfect wedding venue for a group of thrill-seeking friends, but a night of food, drinks, and games quickly spirals into a nightmare, for lurking in the shadows is the ghost bride with a black smile and a hungry heart, and she gets lonely down there in the dirt. That sounds creepy as hell. And I've never read any Asian horror, and I definitely want to move on to reading more diversely in a global sense. All right, these last two books I want to read are not ghost stories, at least not from my understanding anyway, especially not the last one. The last one's a crime novel. But this first one won a Stoker Award, and it's by an author I have yet to read, but I need to read him, and I want to read with his Stoker. I want to start with his Stoker winner. So it's The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias. I've been wanting to read this book for a while now, and I'm going to make it happen this winter. Here is the synopsis. Buried in debt due to his young daughter's illness, his marriage at the brink, Mario reluctantly takes a job as a hitman, surprising himself with his proclivity for violence. After tragedy destroys the life he knew, Mario agrees to one final job: hijack a cartel's cash shipment before it reaches Mexico. Along with an old friend and a cartel insider named Juanca. Sorry, I butchered that, I know I did. Mario sets off on a near-suicidal mission which will leave him with either a cool $200,000 or a bullet in the skull. But the path to reward or ruin is never as straight as it seems. As the 3 complicated men travel through the endless landscape of Texas, across the border and back, their hidden motivations are laid bare alongside nightmarish encounters that defy explanation. One thing is certain: even if Mario makes it out alive, he won't return the same. To me, that just sounds awesome. I want to read more crime novels like this one. Especially, I love when crime meets horror, supernatural horror especially. There's a couple of movies that do this really well, and I'm looking forward to reading The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias. And last up here for this winter TBR, I have Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. The horror S.A. Cosby does not write horror, but the horror community has absolutely adopted him as their own, and I'm all for that. I want to read this guy because he apparently writes really, really good action-packed fiction, crime fiction that I think I'm going to have a blast with. I hope I do. Here is the synopsis for this. Ike Randolph has been out of jail for 15 years, with not so much as a speeding ticket in all that time, but a black man with cops at the door knows to be afraid. The last thing he expects to hear is that his son Isaiah has been murdered, along with Isaiah's white husband, Derek. Ike had... excuse me, I can't talk today. Or read, apparently. Ike had never fully accepted his son, but is devastated by his loss. Excuse me, Derek's father, Buddy Lee, was almost as ashamed of Derek for being gay as Derek was ashamed his father for being a criminal. Buddy Lee still has contacts in the underworld, though, and he wants to know who killed his boy. Ike and Buddy Lee, two ex-cons with little else in common other than a criminal past and a love for their dead sons, band together in their desperate desire for revenge. In their quest to do better for their sons in death than they did in life, hardened men like Ike and Buddy Lee will confront their own prejudices about their sons and each other, as they rain down vengeance upon those who hurt their boys. I like this story for a couple of reasons. I like the idea of trying to find redemption for the way you treated your kid, because it's obvious the father didn't accept his son being gay. I mean, it says so in the synopsis. But what I like even more is the idea of two guys who don't like each other teaming up, to get the bad guys. And as I said, I've heard nothing but really great things by S.A. Cosby, and I can't wait to dig into his work. I want to read it all, especially if I love this book. So that is what I want to read this winter. When I look back to what I wanted to read in the fall, I'm getting better at keeping to my TBRs. I don't know if that's because of the job change. I think it might have something to do with it. I have a little bit more time to read now. And so hopefully I can... I want to read each one of these books really badly, but I'm a terrible mood reader. And that really... I'm an ADHD mood reader in the sense that I'm always attracted to the next shiny thing. There's too many books, too little time, and I know you guys feel the same. Alright, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, please leave me a stack of books down there, deep in the darkness, and I'll leave you some books in return. Keep being safe and keep being creative, and I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.